He sat down beside me without a sound, and I thought it would be another ordinary afternoon. I was wrong. In the next few minutes, one quiet boy and one ordinary story turned into a confession that rearranged how I saw my family, my choices, and the kind of courage we ask of the young without even knowing it. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts or story in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. Now, before I begin, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know which cities and towns are joining me for this memory that stayed with me for years. It was late afternoon, the kind of hour when sunlight slides across the living room rug like warm honey. The house held the steady hush of a well-worn home, clock ticking, distant traffic, the kettle settling after its last hiss. I had set out a plate of apple slices because that's what grandmothers do when they don't yet know which words to offer. My grandson, Noah, came in from the porch with his shoulders pulled a little forward, as if he were trying to make himself a smaller target for whatever the day had thrown at him. He didn't take the chair across from me like he usually did. He slid gently onto the sofa at my side. Close. Our elbows almost touched. He kept his hands together, thumbs circling, as if winding up the bravery he needed. I didn't rush him. I've learned that silence is a kind of kindness, and that patience can be louder than advice. The apple slices sat there, waiting for a hand that didn't come. "Grandma," he said, and his voice was soft, careful, the way people speak in libraries and hospital corridors. "Can I tell you something without you fixing it?" I nodded. "You can tell me anything. And I can listen without fixing." I meant it. I wanted him to feel taller in his own story. We watched a dust mote drift through the beam of sun like a tiny traveler. He drew in a breath. "I'm not who they think I am at school." The words landed between us, light as feathers, heavy as stones. He glanced at the window, then back at me, measuring whether the world would keep turning after he spoke the rest. "I thought today would be fine," he went on. "We had a group project. I did the drawings, and when I put them down, Tyler laughed. He said I only draw because I'm scared to talk. He said quiet kids hide things." My fingers curled around the edge of the cushion. I have known that kind of laughter, the kind that isn't about the joke but about the person who told it. I didn't say that. I let him keep the floor. "I am hiding things," he whispered, "but not because I'm scared, because I don't know if saying them will change everything." A jay called from the maple outside. A car door thudded 2 houses down. Life continued its ordinary chores while my grandson's world balanced on the edge of a sentence. I kept my voice even. "Change can be honest," I said. "And we can be honest together." He nodded, small and slow, then shifted so his knee touched mine. The contact felt like permission, like a door unlocking. "You know how Dad says I should be tougher?" he asked. "I've heard him say that." I tried. He gave a soft, almost embarrassed laugh. "I tried to be loud and to like the things that are easy to understand. But the truth is, I'm not quiet because I'm afraid. I'm quiet because I notice too much. And I think." He hesitated, choosing the next words like fragile glass. "I think I need to be the one who notices. For me. For other people who don't know how to say what's wrong." I felt the tiniest ache in my chest, the kind that comes with recognition. When I was his age, I learned to be useful instead of visible. You can go years that way. Decades, even. "Noticing is a kind of strength," I said, and I meant it more than he knew. He lifted his eyes to mine. "There's more." He swallowed. "I told Miss Hargrove something last week about Logan. He was getting pushed around behind the gym. Nothing dramatic. It's never dramatic. Just little stuff that adds up until you dread the next day. I told her, and she talked to people, and now the boys who did it are mad at me. I have found out. He said I'm a snitch, and he said if I want to be different, I should just admit it. I waited for the rest, but he didn't rush. The kettle clicked again in the kitchen, the metal cooling with a faint sigh. He stared at his hands, then at me, and I watched courage gather itself, piece by piece, the way dawn builds from a pale idea into a morning you can actually walk into. "Grandma," he said finally, "I like being who I am. I like helping, even if it makes me the odd one. But I need you to know that sometimes I hide the parts that don't fit other people's picture of me. I draw because it's how I speak. I sit quietly because it's how I listen. And I told because silence felt wrong." There it was. Not a scandal, not a catastrophe, something braver. A boy choosing decency over approval. I felt the room shift, just enough for me to notice how much space he had been carrying around inside himself, unshared. I reached for an apple slice and placed it in his palm like a small, ordinary medal. "You didn't break the world," I said. "You mended a piece of it." His shoulders eased. He bit into the apple and smiled, the kind that only happens when a truth finally has a place to sit. The sunlight moved another inch along the rug. Somewhere, a neighbor's radio played a song from my younger years, the melody soft and kind. I listened to it, and to him breathing, and to the quiet that no longer felt heavy. It felt earned. "Will Dad be mad?" he asked. "He might be confused," I said honestly. "Confused is just a hallway. We can walk him through it." He leaned his head back and closed his eyes, letting the late light warm his face. "Thanks," he murmured, "for not fixing it." "I'm not fixing it," I said, and I felt a steadiness rise inside me, old roots finding new water. "I'm standing with you while you do." The next day brought a gentler light through the curtains, though inside me there was still the echo of what Noah had shared. His words had lingered like a melody you can't shake, the kind that resurfaces when you're folding laundry or rinsing dishes. I kept replaying his quiet strength, the way he sat beside me, as if the truth itself needed company. It made me wonder about all the times I had kept my own truths tucked away, too cautious to disturb the surface of family harmony. Noah arrived again that afternoon, backpack slung low, his steps softer than usual. He greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I had placed 2 mugs on the coffee table, one for him, though he still thought tea was too grown-up. I poured him apple juice instead, and he sat with the same careful posture, as if settling into a space where honesty could live again. "Did you talk to Dad?" he asked after a pause, his tone steady but edged with worry. "Not yet," I replied. "I wanted to hear from you first. How do you want me to handle it?" He seemed surprised by the question. His brow furrowed, and then his shoulders dropped slightly. "You mean, you'll wait for me to decide?" "Of course," I said. "It's your story, no. I'll stand with you, not in front of you." He leaned back, the tension in his body loosening, though I could still see the storm of thought moving behind his eyes. "Sometimes," he admitted, "I think Dad sees me like a reflection of what he wishes he'd been. Loud, strong, unshaken. But I'm not that. And when he tells me to toughen up, I feel like I'm disappointing him before I even try." The words struck me in a tender place. I remembered my own father's sharp lectures, the ones that carved lines into my sense of self. You carry those echoes long into adulthood, and here was my grandson, carrying them fresh. "You're not a disappointment," I told him softly. "You're a different kind of strength, the kind the world needs, but doesn't always recognize right away." He picked up the apple slice I'd set out, turning it over in his fingers before eating it. What if he never understands? What if he always wants me to be someone louder, tougher? Then we show him, I said, that courage wears many coats. Yours may not be the one he imagines, but it fits you perfectly. And in time, he might see that it keeps others warm too. The clock ticked, and I noticed the way Noah's gaze wandered to the family photos on the wall. He pointed to one, an old picture of his father as a boy, standing awkwardly in a baseball uniform. Did he ever tell you he didn't like baseball? I laughed softly, the sound edged with nostalgia. Every Saturday he begged me not to make him go. But your grandfather thought it would make him tougher. He played anyway, even though he hated every swing. Maybe that's why he thinks it's important now, because he had to do it himself. Noah tilted his head, considering this piece of history. So, he's repeating what hurt him. Yes, I admitted. Sometimes people pass on their struggles, hoping to turn them into strengths, but it doesn't always work that way. For a moment, silence stretched between us again, not heavy but thoughtful. The kind of silence where two people are gently weaving old threads into new patterns. Grandma, Noah said at last, his voice small but clear, I think I'd want to tell him myself. But I need you there, not to speak for me, just to be in the room. I reached for his hand, warm and earnest. Then that's exactly what I'll do. I'll be there, and I'll listen. And we'll give him the chance to listen too. The sunlight shifted across the rug, marking another day gone, another step forward. And as Noah leaned back into the sofa, I realized this wasn't just his journey into courage. It was mine too. I had been given a second chance to heal old echoes, not by rewriting my past, but by walking alongside him in his present. That evening carried a weight I hadn't felt in years. The living room was the same, familiar walls lined with photographs, the steady tick of the clock, but my heart beat differently as Noah's father walked in. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, his usual sigh following, the kind of weary sound men make after a long day. He didn't notice Noah at first, sitting beside me with his shoulders straight, waiting. Dinner smells good, my son said, loosening his tie. Then his eyes caught on Noah. What's going on? The question held no anger, just curiosity, but I could feel Noah tense beside me. His small fingers pressed into his knees. I leaned slightly toward him, just enough so he knew I was there, steady as an anchor. Dad, Noah began, his voice trembling, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to be mad. My son frowned, confusion knitting his features. What is it? The air thickened. Even the refrigerator's hum seemed louder. I watched as Noah pulled courage up from some hidden well. I told Miss Hargrove about Logan being bullied, and now some kids think I'm weak. They think I talk too much. But I couldn't stay quiet. I had to say something. There it was laid out simply, without apology. My son blinked, caught between surprise and something softer. You told the teacher? Yes, Noah said. His chin lifted a fraction, and for a moment I saw the man he might one day become. Because I couldn't just watch. I'd rather they laugh at me than let someone else get hurt. My son shifted his weight, his mouth parting as if to argue, but the words didn't come. His eyes flicked to me. He was searching for guidance, perhaps, or a bridge back to understanding. I didn't speak. This wasn't my story to explain. I thought you wanted me to be tough, Noah continued, his voice stronger now. But toughness doesn't always mean fighting back. Sometimes it means standing up, even when people call you names. I don't want to hide who I am. The silence that followed was thick with possibility. My son sank slowly into the armchair across from us, his brow furrowed. "When I was your age," he said finally, "I stayed quiet. I thought that's what made me strong. No one ever stood up for me, I guess. I thought I was teaching you how to survive." Noah's face softened, and he leaned forward. "But surviving isn't enough. I want to live being myself, even if it's hard." For a moment, my son's eyes glistened, though he tried to mask it with a cough. "You sound older than you are," he muttered, but his tone lacked the old sharpness. Instead, there was a kind of wonder in it, the dawning recognition that his boy was teaching him something. I felt my throat tighten. This was the turning point I hadn't dared to hope for. The old patterns of silence and toughness that had bound generations were loosening, thread by thread, before my very eyes. "You're braver than I ever was at your age," my son admitted, his voice low. "And maybe I should be proud of that instead of pushing you to be someone you're not." Noah exhaled, the weight on his shoulders lifting. He leaned back, a small, relieved smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Dad." The room seemed lighter, as though even the walls understood something had shifted. The photographs on the mantel, my son as a boy, Noah as a baby, suddenly felt like pieces of a puzzle that were finally finding their places. I sat quietly, my hand resting on Noah's arm, and let the moment breathe. It wasn't perfect. Old habits don't vanish in a single evening. But for the first time, father and son were not standing on opposite shores. They were building a bridge, one word at a time. And I knew then that this conversation, this courage, would ripple further than we could see. It would change the way Noah grew, the way my son saw him, and perhaps even the way our family told its stories in the years to come. The days that followed carried a new rhythm in the house. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden transformations, no grand speeches, but it was there, subtle and steady, like the shift in air before a change in season. My son moved through the rooms with more pauses, more moments of looking at Noah instead of just speaking at him. And Noah, in turn, carried himself with a little less weight pressing down on his shoulders. One afternoon, I found them together at the kitchen table. My son was helping Noah with a school project, though it was clear Noah was the one guiding the ideas. They leaned over the paper, voices low, disagreements gentle instead of sharp. My son's hand rested on the table, tapping lightly as he listened, really listened, to what his boy had to say. I stood in the doorway, unnoticed, and felt a warmth rise inside me. The kind of warmth that comes when you witness healing without forcing it. Later that evening, as twilight spilled its lavender tones across the sky, Noah joined me on the porch. He had his sketchbook tucked under one arm, the cover worn at the edges. Without a word, he sat beside me and flipped it open. Page after page revealed careful drawings, faces of classmates, the old maple tree outside, even a sketch of me sipping tea by the window. His world, captured in pencil and patience. "These help me," he said softly, turning a page where lines captured the quiet curve of his father's profile. "They make me brave when words feel heavy." I reached out, gently tracing the corner of the page. "These aren't just drawings, Noah. They're windows. And you're letting people see through them. That's more courageous than most will ever know." He smiled faintly, then leaned against my shoulder. The evening air was cool, but the closeness between us was warmer than any blanket. "Grandma," he whispered, "do you think Dad really understands now?" I thought carefully before answering. Understanding is a journey, not a destination. But he's walking it, and you're guiding him more than you realize. A long silence stretched, filled only with the hum of crickets and the faint laughter of children playing down the street. Finally, Noel closed his sketchbook and looked up at me, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "I was scared, you know." scared he'd never see me for who I am. "And now?" I asked. "Now," he said, "I think I'm okay with being seen, even if it takes time." Those words landed in me like a promise, not just for him, but for all of us. Generations tied together by unspoken rules, now loosening, breathing. My father's stern lessons, my son's inherited toughness, and now Noah's gentle courage, all part of a tapestry that was still being woven. That night, as I lay in bed, I replayed the moments like scenes in a story I didn't want to forget. The quiet courage of a boy who dared to speak, the softened heart of a father learning to listen, and the role I had been given, not to fix, but to witness, to hold, to steady. Life rarely gives us grand finals. More often, it offers us small turning points that ripple outward in ways we may never fully measure. And that afternoon when my grandson sat quietly beside me, opening his heart, was one of those moments. His story had shaken my world, not by breaking it, but by reminding me how love, when listened to, has the power to rebuild it. As I drifted into sleep, I knew that years from now, when Noah was grown, he might not remember every word spoken in that living room, but he would remember being heard. And perhaps that would shape the kind of man he would become, a man who notices, who listens, and who dares to speak even when silence feels easier. And I, his grandmother, would always remember the day his quiet courage became the loudest truth in our family's story.